Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few tight ends I looked at off the wire this week. The first tight end, Colby Parkinson of the Los Angeles Rams. So the last few weeks, he's definitely been a big factor for this Ram team. He was more of a goal line guy who wasn't going to get a lot of targets and a lot of looks. But now the last 3 out of 4 games, double-digit fantasy points here for Colby Parkinson. And now with Adams most likely out in this matchup at Seattle in Week 16 on the short week on Thursday night, it's going to help Parkinson more versus former team, and they do give up the second most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. Week 13 at Carolina, 4 catches, 27 yards. Week 14 at Arizona, 3 catches, 32 yards, a touchdown. And Week 15, a monster game versus the Lions. Even though one of those touchdowns, it looked like he was down at the 1, but they didn't overturn it. 5 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So him and Stafford have definitely built a rapport over the last 3-4 weeks here. He's going out there making plays. He's just not a tight end at the goal line they're looking for. Parkinson this week is a nice waiver wire pickup, and he's out there in 96% of fantasy leagues. Next tight end, Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. Surprising he's still out there is Dalton Schultz right now in 51% of fantasy leagues, so he just makes the list. And he's coming off a monster game is Dalton Schultz. I know he's been some up and down a little bit, but he still is the number 2 target in this passing game, in my opinion, for this Texan team. Week 13 at the Colts, 7 catches, 55 yards. Week 14 at the Chiefs, 3 catches, 22 yards. And Week 15 versus the Cardinals, 8 catches, 76 yards, a touchdown on 9 targets. So this week, a good matchup versus the Vegas Raiders. We know their defense don't stop anyone, but the funny thing is the Raiders give up the 3rd least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. But still, going into this week, I would have confidence starting Dalton Schultz in my lineup. It's another home game for Houston, and coming off a big game like that, especially in a matchup versus the Raiders, he's a nice start for fantasy owners, I think, in the upcoming week here. And also a good ad available in 51% of leagues. Next tight end, Theo Johnson of the New York Giants. So Theo Johnson, it's been a solid season, I think, for him on the year, and he's coming off a 2 out of 3 games with double-digit fantasy points, and he's the number 2 option in this passing game. So Week 16 coming up here, decent matchup versus the Vikings. Give up the 18th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. And Johnson's out there in 54% of fantasy leagues. Week 12 at Detroit, 3 catches, 77 yards. Week 13 at the Pats, 3 catches, 29 yards. And Week 15 versus the Commanders, 3 catches, 72 yards. Jackson Dart in concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to start, and I think at this point of the year, they're just going to shut him down with 3 more weeks left in the season here is this Giant team. But obviously, this offense could still move the football pretty well, I think. And we've seen it earlier with Jameis Winston in there. So Theo Johnson in ad this week, and he's out there in 54% of fantasy leagues. Next tight end, Colston Loveland of the Chicago Bears. So his role is growing weekly for the rookie tight end in Loveland. And the last few weeks here, 3 out of 4 games with double-digit fantasy points. Week 12 versus the Steelers, 4 catches, 49 yards, a touchdown. Week 13 at the Eagles, 3 catches, 28 yards. Week 14 at Green Bay, 4 catches, 29 yards, a touchdown. And Week 15 versus Cleveland, 4 catches, 63 yards on 5 targets. So Week 16, it's going to be a matchup where they know they got to put points on the board. Green Bay, I know they struggled and lost that game at Denver where they had a good lead and blew it. But their offense does move the football up and down the field. And obviously Chicago in a big division matchup here is going to have to match them. And now with Micah Parsons out, most likely with that ACL out for the season, this could be easier for Caleb Williams in this offense to get things going. So Colston Loveland, an ad this week out there in 60% of leagues. And the final tight end, Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. So Dawson Knox, he had a big ball game. And yes, Kincaid's back in the lineup, and he's been over the last couple weeks. But Dawson Knox, 2 weeks in a row with big ball games, taking advantage of his matchup. So Week 13 at Pittsburgh, or whatever game, 3 catches, 28 yards. Week 14 versus Cincinnati, 6 catches, 93 yards, a 2-point conversion. Week 15 in New England, 3 catches, 37 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's been a big target in the red zone once again for Josh Allen and this offense. What a comeback victory it was for Buffalo. They were down 21-0. Came back and won the ball game. And Dawson Knox, the last 2 weeks, he's putting up elite numbers at the position. So Week 16, not a great matchup at Cleveland. Gives up the 10th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. But if you need a tight end in deep leagues, he's out there right now. Is Knox in 97% of fantasy leagues. That's a few tight ends I would look to add off the wire for Week 16 of the fantasy football season.